Hello, everyone, and welcome to Life Unpotted. Happy you're here today. Sophie and I were just talking, and we recognize that sometimes we don't have ultra present conversations on this podcast that we could be, because rightfully so, we're really excited about all of the things that we insightfully are processing, all of the insights, all of the experiences. And I'm questioning right now if that could possibly have a bigger impact if we actually sit with our insights versus, speaking about them upon the excitement that they bring us. And what if we can allow ourselves to sit presently holding those insights and really grounding and listening to each other? I think as you're on the dance of life and you're always figuring out new things, it's always healthy to reevaluate and to not settle or get too comfortable on something that is seemingly working for you. And I think it's always good to question things that you think are going perfectly. Because if you have strong conviction that something is going perfectly, maybe there's a level of something that you're trying to conceal by tightly grasping onto that strong level of conviction. And I say this with excitement because there's always more. We can infinitely go to understanding more and more and more and more. And the good reminder is there's no rush to get there. There's no rush to get anywhere, because the most exciting things are truly happening in this very moment. And I want to talk about that because it is something that impacts us in any given moment with everything that we do. How present can we be with any given thing in our life that we love? How present can we be with the things that bring us the most happiness? If we think we're so happy with something, is it possible that we can be even more present with it? And is it possible that if we're even more present with it, we'll realize that it's not the thing that's bringing us happiness, but instead the present moment itself of us actually being present with it? Just a way to open this conversation. And Sophie, I'm curious where you're at right now, what you're feeling in regards to this moment, particularly because this is the only moment we have. It's the only moment that exists. So I want to hear about how you experience this moment.
You said a lot of interesting things there. In terms of this moment right now, feel grounded, feel connected, feel in my body, feel relaxed, like there's nowhere else I need to be. And I think that is a feeling that's like really hard to get sometimes, because we're constantly going through life looking to get somewhere in the future that we end up missing out on what's right in front of us. And I was home this past week visiting family and visiting my parents, and I was really reflecting on, I had this moment of, I was looking at old family photos and I was looking at my childhood, and for the first time ever, I was looking at these photos with true presence of looking at the photos and seeing myself and seeing my family. And now I'm 30 years old, so that's a lot of chunk of time that's passed. And it hit me that my childhood, it's over, and that part of my life is over, and I'm not a kid anymore. And it's not like I'm not a kid anymore, which means that I'm going to be a rigid adult. Like, that's not what this means. It's more so, wow, that span of my life happened. And when I was going through it, I didn't even know what the great things that were really happening. I didn't really know how great it was. So that really kind of makes me think about how, like, we can go through life, and it's not until we look back and reflect that we realize, wow, like, things were really, really going great then. We were exactly where we needed to be. And having that hindsight to look back at photos of when I'm like 15 years old, and even I remember like the difficulties of those years, the difficulties of growing up, but looking at the moments where I feel so connected to myself and I feel so connected to life. And at the same time, that's showing me, I think, there's a part of me also looking at those photos of childhood and like, I feel like I'm really coming back to that version of myself and looking at her and looking at, wow, 7-year-old Sophie really was connected to her being, to not trying to change herself to be any sort of other way beyond the way I just was. So I think there's a lot of insight and reflection, and especially looking back on our childhood, but just what I feel most connected to right now is kind of, you can't have hindsight when you're going through an experience at the time. And I think when we're going through experiences as they're unfolding, it's easy for us to feel like they're not good enough. But having that clarity of, wow, I'll never get those years back. It was painful to realize that, because I was like, wow, my parents are 65. What happened? Where did life go? I'm 30, and this wake up call to live. I think it's a wake up call to live, to not take things for granted, and to experience love with the people around us, experience love with the people who were able to experience that with. Like, I had a moment where I was home where I realized, wow, yes, of course, so many things have happened with my family the past few years, but I was always contributing in how present I was with these people. And it's like, for the first time ever, I feel like I was really present with my mom. And it was beautiful, and my siblings. And it showed me that we can miss out on what's right in front of us. We can fail to recognize that what it is that we want is here. And I kind of say that with a sense of, in the most relaxed way, with a sense of urgency, to recognize this, because without this recognition, years can pass like they did pass, where in another 40 years, I look back on this point and I go, wow, that was it. That was the time. That was my life. And it was so beyond beautiful, but I couldn't see it. So wanting to kind of help whoever's listening to ground themselves in reality right now, and feeling like life can pass us by, but we only do have it one chance. And I think that really, really, really sunk in, of being like, wow, I'll never get my childhood back. And I wish I was able to appreciate it more as it was unfolding. And that's kind of a deep feeling to recognize, a grounding, it's a heavy feeling of truth, of it won't happen again. And I don't want to make that same mistake for the rest of the years that I do have.
To realize that you might not be living right now is a really deep, deep, deep recognition. To look back and see how beautiful something was, like your childhood, and how happy it was. And to realize that it's almost like you couldn't, or at least you didn't, appreciate it for what it was in every single second that was happening. And I think that's a really good lesson, because it's not necessarily about appreciating it in every second going forward that has to do with our life. I think that sends the wrong message of like forced positivity. And that's not at all where I'm going. Where I'm going is a level of awareness that you can have everything happening at once. You can have levels of pain or sadness or fear or anxiety, all the while you are grateful that you're having this experience, or I would say at the very least aware that you're having this experience. It's almost like when you can recognize that and actually be here, not living life through a lens of conditionings, because we all have conditionings that we live our life through. And I think that what you're saying, Sophie, of reflecting back and wondering if this was such a happy time, why wasn't I constantly aware of it? Because now it's over. And I think that was a really beautiful comparison to one day we're going to be at the end of our life and be like, oh, wow, it's over. Why couldn't I have been aware of that it was going to end in every single second? And that's what you're posing right now. How do we live our life like that? And I think it's impossible to have that recognition, and this is just my opinion, without a level of forgiveness towards yourself, forgiveness for not being well equipped to have that awareness of appreciating all of this while it was happening, this life that we have, all these years that you've lived on autopilot, all of these years you've lived for the future or you've lived set in the past. You have to forgive yourself. And I think you have to grieve the fact that that's not what it was. Grieve the fact that you thought that you couldn't. Grieve the fact that you thought you were something else. And I think upon holding those feelings, you can actually recognize that you can have awareness that this is happening and it's all going to end while holding every feeling. It's not about forcing yourself to be happy or grateful and pushing away the challenging stuff. It's about holding that pain that startles you, to awaken you to realize, oh, I haven't been living, because that's a pain. If you can recognize you have not been living, if you can allow yourself, and everyone can, usually there's an event or there's something that happens in your life, or just a fed up with not living that happens, where if you just recognize that you have been asleep, you've not been awake, and you can hold that pain can be the window to seeing the light, to seeing the sunlight, to waking up. And that pain doesn't have to be the center of it all. That pain can be something that's there. That pain can be a reminder that it's painful to be alive. But if there's a level of discomfort and pain, it's like, right, you're alive. And that propels you. It's important to have something that's waking you up, because if we fall too deeply into comfort, we might not realize what we have in front of us. We might not recognize that the life we're living is perfect. And I can't help but think of George Bailey from It's a Wonderful Life. It's embodying this exact realization that you can be living your life that is amazing. It's so good, but you can't see it because you're not living it. You're not here right now experiencing it. You're somewhere else. You're in the anger of the past, the anxiety of the future. So it's a level of accepting all of the pain for all of the things you've done wrong in your life that allows you, I think, as one vessel to be able to get here right now.
Reflection is like such a powerful tool. Like, it's never too late in life to wake up. It's never too late in life to wake up. Like, after being home and spending time with my parents and having this recognition of, wow, yeah, I'm growing up now. I'm no longer a teenager. I'm 30. I'm able to reflect on the way in which I've showed up in my family, and having one of those moments where, like, wow, as a teenager, I was so caught up in and consumed by my friends and dating and boys and all these things that at the time, like, yeah, it's like the most important thing ever. And I'm not by any means sitting here and going, I wish I acted differently, because how much can you really know when you're 15, 16, 17 years old? How much can you really know when you're these ages of, yeah, the person who's raising you, and maybe I'm slamming my doors as a 12-year-old teenager and saying, I hate you, Mom. Maybe that one day my mom won't be here. So, of course, we can't grasp our human existence and mortality and the miracles of this life when our brains aren't fully developed at that age. And we are living with a very limited perspective of reality. But what matters now is recognizing that that limited perspective of reality might not just end when you're 15. That limited perspective of reality might carry you into your later days of later 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, still unaware that there are all of these thoughts and emotions that are controlling you. There are all these experiences from the past that you have not looked at, that we went through life really, really, really quickly, that we never took the time to stop and pause. And this point of taking time to pause I have a lot more time now than I ever have because I am no longer working at my job and I am working for myself, and this has provided me with a lot more time. But this concept of how we use our time is a very, very interesting topic because I could have done everything I'm doing now in a way while I was working at my job. But instead, I chose to aimlessly scroll on TikTok or to worry about dating or to worry about all these things and live in a very anxious state. So what it comes down to is like, how do we actually enjoy life? Is learning how to actually be relaxed in our days so that we're not just seeking the dopamine. We're not just doing the thing that is comfortable. I was listening to a Rick Rubin, Andrew Huberman podcast that I've been like raving about because it was like every part of my brain was like, yes. When you listen to something and you're like, I needed to hear that, but I didn't even know I needed to hear that. And they said something like, when you want to do something and you don't do it, there's a part of your brain that grows. Actually, I don't know if it's that episode, but Huberman said in a different podcast of a part of your brain grows and learns that something strengthens in your mind. But really what they're talking about is like the benefit of doing stuff that's uncomfortable and not doing that thing that we initially wanted to do, not grabbing the phone when we want to grab the phone, and how that can really, really change our life. And I think I think that that's really interesting because so much of these massive changes that I'm now living in my life have only come to fruition because I haven't caved to going on the pathway that my mind wants me to go down, to reacting to the thing that I want to react to not pushing myself. So in a way, I feel like in order to live life and appreciate what's going on in front of us, we really do have to push ourselves and face the fact that what our mind might want is not what we actually want. That with my mind, when I'm sitting with my mom or my parents and I feel like I want to be somewhere else, that there's going to come a time where I realize all I ever wanted was to be with them. All I ever wanted was to connect, but I didn't know that that's what I was wanted. So perhaps the really important recognition is getting in tune with what we want and recognizing that what our heart wants, what our beautiful being wants, what this beautiful gift of existence wants, like in here, is not the same thing up here. And not waiting until it's too late that we can't go back to implement this presence into our everyday life where we are not taking our experiences for granted. We're not living in a very limited perspective of all of a sudden our phone is our life. We're not living because we don't know how to live anymore. I think a lot of us don't know how to live anymore.
Well, I want to go back to something you said about how we want to connect with our parents. How you mentioned that, all you could be wanting to do is sitting there and all you want to do is connect with your parents, but connecting in that way that you're not a child, connecting in that way that it's just a human seeing another human. We're wired to crave that, but it can be scary. I think something that is ironic and challenging, and maybe there's a purpose to it, is that we as humans, we need connection. And depending who you are, connection will mean something different to you. But the more you have a connection with yourself, a real one, where you're forgiving yourself and loving yourself, the more you can have that infinite love inside of you, where you're knowing love comes from no one else but you, is when you're able to have really deep, meaningful, and fulfilling connections with people. And the fact is that it can be really scary to have a conversation with someone who we love and to not break eye contact. The first determiner of how deep is this connection going to be. And that it goes in line with what you were saying of just because it feels good to go on TikTok doesn't mean that's what we want. But what is scary is to really connect with someone we love. To connect with anyone, because we love everyone. If we love ourselves, then we actually love everyone. And I recognized this recently when I went to a local smoothie place in Austin. And I was in a really vulnerable state. I was listening to a really vulnerable podcast, and I was just seeing myself. I was being with myself. And with the cashier, we really connected. We didn't break eye contact. And it was startling because I was nervous and I was scared, but them not also breaking eye contact showed me that I'm not strange for wanting that level of connection. That's just basic human connection. And we've really lost touch with that, I see, because it feels so good to be showing up as you. It doesn't even matter what you're saying to each other if the other person is actively just listening to you and you're both present with each other. And it can be really scary to do that. That's the first thing that came to mind when you were saying how, it's the things that scare us that we have to do to grow. And to define growth, it's deeply fulfilling to find meaning in your existence that's within you. And by that, I mean, I see how our society has learned to displace value and meaning onto almost anything but the connection with ourself. And the connection with ourself is absolutely necessary to sustain any sort of positive connection. And all we want is connection. And we can get so lost thinking that we have to buy connection, that we aren't good enough or worthy of connection, that we're not attractive enough for connection, that we're just not enough, maybe. Is that the root of that? And I think just sometimes people can use self-growth as a means of self-hatred to say you are bad and you've done this and you have to prove yourself. So go grow. But that's not what self-growth is. Self-growth is anything, but you have to have love for yourself. And I think that in a society where we're all full of pain, we've allowed self-growth to be fueled by hatred for ourselves. Toxic growth culture. And I'm just reflecting on this because it's a slippery slope. And life is meant to be enjoyable. And by that, I mean we're meant to do things that are hard and scary. And we have to cultivate a sense of love within ourselves to have the resilience to handle these difficult things. But there's a reward at the end of doing difficult things. It's that we trusted ourselves to do it. And that's what growth is. It's trusting that you can do something and stepping into the uncertainty of it and trusting yourself.
Two interesting topics you just mentioned. I'm not sure which direction to go in which. One of them being like kind of how when we're on the self-growth journey, how we really can use that as a tool to feel bad about ourselves and to kind of keep us stuck in that pattern. But I don't know if I really want to go down that path. I think I'm more interested in this kind of idea of connection and how I think in our society we've sexualized connection. So it's like your romantic partner is the only person you should be having that true connection with, or that true love with. And I've been reflecting on this recently. I was hanging out with my friend George Poulos when I was in New York. He also has a podcast. Check it out. And we were talking about how like everything in life is love. If it's not love, what is it? If you're not connecting or interacting with someone out of a place of love, where are you connecting with them from? And the importance of this point was kind of like recognizing that it is so normal to feel love and connection towards other people. We are all here on this planet together. Of course, we can cultivate that love with other people. And I think maybe community has been kind of in my mind like woo-woo. Like, oh, it's weird if you're like loving with other people. And I mean loving, like again, like in my mind that turns to sexual. But that's not what I mean. Like loving is like, I see you, I care about you, I am in this moment with you. I want to just be here with you. I'm appreciating your presence. And I don't know if it was living in New York City, but going there and visiting there, wow. Like the disconnect that you feel of people. I was going to an event, Storytell New York. We're going to have the community organizer of that on the podcast soon, which I'm excited about doing this segment where we have community builders on. But I was in the lobby and I was about to go up and I was running late, and there's this girl who was there who she was waiting to go upstairs too. And I was like, hey, like, how are you? Because I'm so used to being in Austin where people are so open. And she wouldn't even look at me. And she was like looking straight, like she wouldn't make eye contact with me. And it's interesting because for me, like a few years ago, that probably would have been normal, that I wouldn't, because I was in it. I was in the disconnection. So like I couldn't see that. I was like, oh, why are we not looking at each other right now? It's almost like living in New York City, and I'm curious if I'm sure this happens in other places of the world, right? We can't blame it on the city. It's how disconnected are we from ourselves, but just seeing like that form of genuine connection is not there because you're rushing. You're going somewhere else. You're thinking about yourself. You're so self-consumed that the idea of like the collective, the idea of caring about other people, it's almost like in a way considered weird. It's like we think that, oh, those people look like they're having so much fun together. Like, oh, like we're uncomfortable by it. Like, what's up with that?
So if people are calling it weird, or if a part of you is calling it weird, is that only because you were uncomfortable? Is that a defense mechanism for being made to feel uncomfortable? Because where my mind originally went was thinking that ages and ages and ages of the church demonizing any sort of intimacy because it was a fear-based modality. Religion was fear-based, or at least like the Abrahamic religions were all fear-based out of God is watching you. So, of course, an organization that is fear-based and wants to keep you in fear is going to demonize intimacy and think, oh, intimacy is adulterous. It's sinful. When it's all wrong, because intimacy is what allows us to be here and be happy. And I think it's gotten a confusing rep maybe because of these origins and these things that have controlled the world or controlled the mass population for ages. And you have intimacy when you walk past a tree that you love. Like you have intimacy with nature. If you get to a point of intimacy within yourself, you can have intimacy when the garbage trucks that are clamoring drive by you. Intimacy is a state of being. Intimacy is a place that you exist within, and you're no longer afraid of it because you're living it. Okay, and Sophie's going to look up the definition of intimacy because I think at the end of the day, intimacy it's scary and we fear it, but we shouldn't fear it. We should become a part of it. So share us that definition.
Okay, so a few definitions. Close familiarity or friendship, closeness. The example, the intimacy between a husband and wife. Private, cozy atmosphere. An intimate act, especially sexual intercourse. Wait, one second. Merriam-Webster definition, the state of being intimate, familiarity, something of personal, private nature.
Wow. Okay, so I would like to get like a different, not English or Western definition of it. Maybe understand like the Latin definition of it, of like where is its origin? Because clearly that is the societal definition that we currently live within right now. Because I guarantee you, okay, you got it?
Okay, I looked up intimacy definition Buddhism, and this quote came up. When you know yourself, you know intimate action. Thus, Buddha and ancestors can thoroughly actualize this intimate heart and intimate language. Intimate means close and inseparable. There is no gap. Intimacy embraces Buddha ancestors. So is it like, holy shit, like it's all rooted in division?
Exactly. It is. It's that we have forgotten that we are all one. We are, of course, intimate with ourselves. That's exactly what it is. It's rooted in the fact that intimacy means that there is no division. Intimacy is unity. Okay, I'm going to say that again. Intimacy is unity. And unity is seeing you and everyone and everything around you. So, of course, intimacy is a state of being. It's a state of existence because you're connected to everything because there is no separation between you and everything.
I like it. I'm looking at this Lions Roar website. This is where I was reading about Thich Nhat Hanh the other day. I'm curious about it, but okay, this website, it's a Dharma talk on intimacy. And it's talking about the roots of our word intimacy are Latin, intimus, as in my intimate friend, and the verb intimare, which means to make known, to announce, to impress. So it seems that I was talking about like the Japanese origin. The Japanese word for intimacy is mitsu, meaning secret, hidden, undisclosed. And it seems like he's going off to talk about how intimacy is something tied to not knowing, to having no answer, providing an opportunity for awakening.
Well, this is clearly where the importance of having...
Wait, interesting. He says, we meet not minds, but people, flesh and blood, thinking and feeling human beings. Yeah, it's so interesting. It's just like every language and definition that we have is just based off of this root of division, but not actually based off of like the reality of what's happening. Like, of course, the way we've been taught about intimacy is not right.
Well, it reminds me of the importance of, maybe we can get like a linguistic specialist on the podcast, because of course you're going to learn so much about a society or a culture through its language. I think it was our friend Adele who was telling us there's a certain language where I does not exist. When they refer to themselves, they're referring to themselves as you. So I think it's important to understand the language and how the language, its makeup, it's informing the culture, and the culture of more so the culture has informed the language. And wow. Well, that's the whole thing of I really have been taking an interest in Buddhist teachings lately, because they are so powerful and they all go back to the reminder of we are all one in a way that is so beautiful and touching. Like, the best way to describe it, I feel like, and I've been listening to a lot of Tara Brach, and if you don't listen to her or have not heard of her, if I would recommend anyone that you should check out, it should be her, because she has entirely impacted my life, and that's another story. But I think it's beautiful to imagine this world. Like, I feel like when I listen to her, I'm walking through a garden on a spring day where you just pay attention to every strain of green grass from all the rain, and the smell of the flowers, and the bloomings of the flowers that bloom for a month out of the year and 3 weeks out of the year. And it's a wake-up call and a reminder of what is really here, and how if we tune into that, we don't ever have to live without it. We can live that way no matter what. So I think all of this, going back to, what is this definition of intimacy? It's understanding and unpacking why we fear intimacy. And that could be a whole other topic of conversation as well. But I think really bringing it back to meaning, to living a meaningful life, that is real and here and now and in this moment, we have to question why we have a fear of intimacy. And this isn't going for if you're in a relationship. This is nothing to do with that. This has everything to do with how you interact with the world, because you as a person have intimacy with yourself. You have intimacy with the way you open your door and look outside and see the grass and the trees. So I think it's questioning, why do we fear that? And I think it would be an interesting poll to ask people, what does intimacy mean to you and why are you afraid of it? It's not even asking people if they're afraid of it. It's asking why.
Well, I imagine the response to the poll would probably be the first thing people think of is intimacy in my relationship, intimacy with my partner, which just shows that the way in the Western world we have learned about connection, and then we've learned about closeness, and we've learned about what it means to connect with one another, has always been through romantic perspective of your partner. And it's just like intimacy is just closeness. It's just arrival in the here and now. It's arrival in where you're at. It's arrival in what's happening. And I think of like those movies where like the person is just so angry and hurt, and at the end of the movie they connect and they're seen, like being seen, being close, being intimate, being seen connecting with one another is what fixes everything, I think. It's not about anything we have to do, or it makes me wonder. I wonder if like someone's like been struggling with like depression or something, like how this power of connection can wake you up. It can snap you out of it. And we as a society, I feel like we're so disconnected. We don't know what it means to really connect, what it really means, because we're scared of being seen. And it goes back, like I'm starting to see the web of like all these different interconnectedness of like the fear of being seen with social media. But that fear of being seen, of course, if we're scared of being seen on social media, of course we're scared of being seen in real life. Like we're scared of being seen, we're scared of being vulnerable. So it's like, why? And I know why. Like for myself, it's the fear of getting hurt. So that's a whole nother conversation, but it's powerful. I even see this with my family. Why am I scared to be seen? Why am I scared to make eye contact directly? Why am I so scared to be seen? And I'm so scared to connect, but all we want in life is connection. All we ever want when we look back in life is, I wish I was connecting. But so how can we foster that more?
I don't think it's a simple question to answer, but I do want to reference, and this maybe will help me answer that. When you said movies, The Scrooge, all of these Christmas themed movies that origin 200, 300 years ago, where take Scrooge, for example. He hoards all of his money. He works. There's so many people in his life who are in need, who are joyous and grateful, but he can't stand them because they're full of love and they're connected, and he's so full of pain himself. And same concept as It's a Wonderful Life. He goes and he looks at the reality of the past, what was really happening, what is happening now, seeing it throughout not his eyes, but plain as daylight, what's actually happening and what is going to happen to him in the future if nothing changes. And it's based in reality. It's a wake-up call. Like these movies are depicting what it means to wake up, to wake up to what we really have here, how we can in any moment decide to connect, to really be here. And these examples through media of these stories, I think they depict, it's different for each person how they're going to get here. But I think what these stories come together to share is the beauty of perspective, how understanding that you could lose what you have right now. And if you lost what you have, that would be what allowed you to make the change because you realize you do want it. So it could be a helpful practice to recognize losing everything in your life, losing it all, whether that's death, whether that's your life dissolving and actually losing everything because you're not willing or able to connect and to feel. Maybe connection's the only way through, getting us through difficult times. Maybe we have to connect with ourselves. I think it's one where there is no distinct answer, but I think this literature and this media, it offers this perspective of truly, we don't know what we have until it's gone. And if we see what we have be taken and actually experience what it means to lose, if we then all of a sudden get it back, our entire perspective on everything is going to change. We're going to be so grateful for the things that used to make us want to get angry or get upset. And I think that's something to sit with.
Because for the first time ever, we're seeing it clearly. We're seeing it with fresh eyes. We're seeing what's actually there. We're paying attention to what's always been there that we haven't been able to see because we're wearing the cloudy glasses. We're wearing the glasses of fear. We're wearing the glasses of this isn't good enough. What we're really doing, we're wearing the glasses of the mind. We're in the mind and we're not here. And that gets in the way of us really experiencing the beautiful connection that's right in front of us, wanting to be somewhere else, thinking, I think of, wow, being on your phone when you're with somebody else, you are deeming that moment not good enough. Why do I want to be elsewhere? I was at a museum with my mom in the city, and I was really reflecting on, I think, coming out of this wave of like being on my phone so much the past 5-10 years, really, like not being in the world. And it's like because you think Instagram's better to be than in the beautiful place with the loved one right in front of you, you think that person on TikTok is more valuable because it's giving you the dopamine. Like, holy shit, it's insane to start to wake up. I think coming off from using social media as much as I did, I use it so much, to now experiencing the beauty of the sunrise or the shadow against a tree. What I once thought was so boring. How dare I think that this gift of life is boring? And I think I feel on a mission to help people wake up to what's right in front of them, to help people recognize that you've arrived, you've landed in this human body on earth. You're here, okay? Do you want to enjoy the garden, the beautiful gardens in front of you? Or are you in a trance, thinking, worrying? Where are you? And when we can come back to truth, when we can allow ourselves to experience things that maybe we think are weird because we're judging it. Oh, I don't want to like connect with those people because it's weird. They're weird. That's not any of it. We're all human. We're all beneath the labels, beneath the preferences, beneath the ideas, beneath the stories, the definition of intimacy. Wow. I would like to look at other definitions. Who came up with these definitions? We have to question the way in which society is being run. Otherwise, we run the risk of being run by the mind and not love and not truth.
I think that would be a really interesting episode, and maybe we do this for Thursday, is that we get a bunch of words like intimacy and we look at the definition from Merriam-Webster, and then we look at the Eastern definition.
Like, who even is Merriam-Webster and why? Like, you know what I mean?
Like probably a pilgrim, or what's the word? Like, probably someone who is stiff. That's what I have to say. So I really, 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 really enjoyed this conversation because it really struck a chord of what is real, what drives us, which is connection. You could say connection is the one thing that drives us. It's the most important thing. And you can look at the different levels of why our American society or like our Western society is sick. But one of the biggest reasons why you'd see it sick, in my opinion, is because, we've created the nuclear family, which is made up. Like, we used to survive in tribes where we would be raised by several different people. We would have the parents that were the primary caregivers, but we would have love coming from every direction. There was no division. And I think division has become so extreme in the society of ours that we've normalized division. And we have commodified connection. We have almost made connection seem to be something that is rare, that you're lucky if you get it, or you don't even look at it as something that is a need, a necessity. It is a basic need.
It's like money is the root of everything. If we didn't have to work, if we didn't have to pay bills, if we didn't have to do all these things. And we could talk about this more later, but just, like the fact that we've commodified and you have to buy everything and there's a business, we pay to get buried. Like, come on. Like, not that, again, it's not about money. It's just about like how everything is a business. America's a business. So we have to come back to truth. And hopefully with cryptocurrency, and I really see the importance of decentralization financially. I would like to add that to our podcast segments, like changing the way we think financially to be financially independent so that we can put time into this stuff. And a lot more to say on that, but this is a really beautiful conversation. I felt the groundedness. It's like I felt we're here. And that's a beautiful feeling to feel because it feels real. It feels grounded. And I'm excited to continue talking.
Likewise, and really excited for these upcoming segments where we're learning to explore more, have fun with this, relax more. So of course, with that, creativity blossoms, skyrockets up and to the right. So hope you enjoyed today's conversation. Hope it meant something to you. And we will see you on Thursday, and have a great rest of your day. And hope you notice the flowers that are starting to bloom as we enter spring.
All right. Wow. March 1st, I was recording this. Wow. Time flies, man. All right, everyone. Hope you have a beautiful day, and we'll talk to you on Thursday. Take care.